There's a story told of the Heilige Ruzhiner, the Holy Ruzhiner. The Ruzhiner was in the time of the Alter Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, the second and third Rebbe of Lubavitch, approximately 150, 180 years ago. And he was called the Holy Ruzhiner. When he was a little child, he was learning chumash with his Malamed. And one of the interesting things about him was that he always used to ask the question that Rashi is going to ask. In other words, when he learned a pasuk in chumash and something didn't make sense, he asked the question, and the Malamed would tell him, yes, this is exactly what Rashi is going to ask and what Rashi is going to explain. There was one time that he came to Parshas Vayetze, in the beginning of the Parsha, where it talks the story of Yaakov, how he left his father's house, Yitzchak, and he was going to Lavan, to Shem Ve'ever, and he stopped off in the place where the Beis Hamikdash was going to be later, and it says that he went to sleep, right? And what does it say? That he had a dream. The Sula Mutzav Arza, that there was a ladder that was stuck in the ground, and Veroisha Magia Shemaima, and the head of the ladder goes up to Shamayim, to the sky, and the Malachim were going, Oilim V'yerdim, but the Malachim were going up or going down. So the Malamed was sure that the Ruzhiner is going to ask the question that Rashi asks. Malachim are usually in heaven. So how should it say, the pasuk say? The Malachim are coming down and going up. But here in the pasuk, that's not what it says. In the pasuk, it says the opposite. In the pasuk, it says, Oilim V'yerdim are going up and then are going down. So Rashi asks, how does that make sense with Malachim? Malachim should be the other way around. Angels first should come down and then should go up. But the Ruzhiner wasn't asking any questions. So the Malamed asked the Heilige Ruzhiner, why aren't you asking what Rashi is asking? So the Ruzhiner says, no. When it comes to a dream, you don't ask any questions. In a dream, everything is possible. We're going to be learning here, in our Parsha here, in Parsha Miketz, we're going to be learning about a dream. So we will see how everybody asks a kasha on the dream. People ask questions on the dream. And the Rebbe will show us how there is no kasha on the dream. The pasuk is so clear, so simple, that there is no kasha. And this is going to be a revolutionary idea that the Rebbe has in the whole story of the dreams of Pharaoh, which are right in the beginning of our Parsha. So let's go directly into the sources. This is a Sicha in Likutei Sichos, volume 15, from pages 339 through 347. And we're going to see something very interesting here. Normally, we learn a pasuk with Rashi. Here we are going to see that there's a massive question that everybody asks, and Rashi doesn't even touch it, because Rashi feels that it's so simple that he doesn't even have to explain it. What is it? Let's go straight to the sources. Go to your source number 1, this is the beginning of Parshas Miketz. I quoted here some of the psukim that we need, the basic ones that discuss the dreams of Pharaoh. What are the dreams? Says the pasuk, Vayhi Miketz Nusayim Yomim. Source number 1, pasuk Aleph. It was at the end of 2 years, the 2 years that Yosef was in jail, etc. Pharaoh had a dream, and he's standing in front of the Ye'or, in front of the Nile. Pasuk Beis, the river. Pasuk Beis, Vehine min haye'or, and here from the Nile, from the river, Oilos sheva pares, come up 7 cows. Yefeis mare uvriyesh basar, batir'ena ba'achu. They were very fat, very good looking, and they were grazing on the field. Pasuk Gimel, Vehine sheva pares acheres oilos achareihen min haye'or. Come another set of 7 cows after the first 7. But this second set, says the pasuk, ro'is mare v'dakis basar. They were very thin, very emaciated. And they came and stood next to these other cows. Pasuk Dalet. So the thin cows swallowed up. They swallowed up the thick cows. And Pharaoh woke up. That's the first dream. 7 fat cows, 7 thin cows, and Pharaoh woke up. Pasuk Vayishon, he went back to sleep. Vayachalim shenis, and he had a second dream. Vehine sheva shibolim oiles bekona echot briyos v'toyves. 7 stalks of wheat come up. They were very fat, very good looking. But pasuk vav vehine sheva shibolim dakis shdufes kodim tzemches acharehen. Then comes 7 thin stalks of wheat. They were very, very thin, and there was nothing left to them. And what happened? Pasuk Zayin, Vativlano hashibolim hadakos, the thin wheat swallowed up sheva hashibolim habriyas ve'amloyes, swallowed up the 7 fat wheat. Vayikatz Pharaoh v'hinei chaloim, and Pharaoh woke up and he saw that it's a dream. Pasuk Ches, Vahi baboker, came in the morning, Vatipo emruchay, and he became agitated. Vayishlach, he called, Vayikros kol chartumim mitzrayim v'skol chachomeho. He called over all the chachamim, all the geniuses, all the smart people, all the sorcerers, all the magicians of Egypt. Vaysaper lohem es chaleime, and Pharaoh told them his dream. Ve'ein poiser oisem leParoi, and there's nobody that can answer, can interpret to Pharaoh what this dream means. So, of course, everybody remembers the story of last week, that Yosef was in jail, and you had the 2 ministers, the Sar HaMashkim, the Sar HaOifim, the one who took care of the wine, the one who took care of the bakeries, and one of them got Pharaoh hung, and the other one, the one who used to make the wine, Pharaoh put him back on his job. So the Sar HaMashkim, the one who was giving the wine, he tells Pharaoh, Pasuk Tez, Vaydabe Sar HaMashkim es Pharaoh lemor, the Sar HaMashkim told Pharaoh, Es chato'ai ani maskir hayem, I remember now my sins, and I went to jail, and in jail I had a dream, and he goes through the whole thing, how there was a young Jewish man, and he managed to interpret dreams. So it would be a good idea for Pharaoh to call him out from the jail. Pharaoh calls him from the jail, and then let's go to source number 2. We're going to skip till Pasuk Tezvav. Now Yosef is standing in front of Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says as follows: Vayomer Pharaoh el Yosef. Pharaoh tells Yosef, Chaloim cholamti ufeiser en oisei. I had a dream, but there's no one that can interpret it. Vani shamati olecha leimer. I heard about you. The people say that tishmach aloim liftar oisei, that you could listen to a dream and you can interpret it. Pasuk Tezayin. Vayan Yosef es Pharaoh leimer. So Yosef answered to Pharaoh and he said as follows: Bilodai Elokim Yanes Shlei Pharaoh. The Rebbe is the one who is going to, Hashem is the one who's going to respond to the issues of Pharaoh. Pasuk Zayin. Vaydaber Pharaoh el Yosef, and Pharaoh now goes and tells Yosef, Bachaloimi, in my dream, Hineni oimed al sfas ha'yoir, I'm standing on the shore of the river, Vehinem min ha'yoir oilet sheva paros, and he goes through the whole dream. At first he sees 7 fat cows, and then how he sees the 7 thin cows, and the 7 thin cows eat up the 7 fat cows, and then later he has a dream with the wheat, and what happened at the end of the dream of the wheat, Pasuk Chavdalet, Vativlano hashibolim hadakos, the thin wheat swallowed the thick wheat, and I told it to all my Egyptian chachamim, chartumim, the magicians, and no one could tell me what the story is. So Yosef answers as follows. Go to source number 3, Pasuk Chav Hei. Vayomer Yosef al Pharaoh. Yosef told Pharaoh, Chaloim Pharaoh echadu. You saw 2 dreams, but really it's 1 dream. What the Rebbe is about to do, this is what he's telling Pharaoh in the dream. Pasuk Chavav, he's going to make a short summary first. Yosef says as follows, Pasuk Chavav, Sheva pares hatoves, Sheva shanim heina. Vesheva shibolim hatoves, Sheva shanim heina, Chaloim echadu. Although you saw 7 fat cows and 7 fat wheat, you should know that it's all 1 Chalim, it's 1 dream, 1 subject of 7. The same thing is with the thin ones. And the cows, the thin cows that came after the thick ones, Sheva Shanim Heima, it symbolizes the 7 years. And the same thing, the 7 thin wheat are also representing 7 years of hunger. Pasuk Chavches, Hu hadover asher dibarti al Pharaoh. This is what I told before Pharaoh. Asher ha'elikim oise heres Pharaoh. What the Rebbe is about to do, he is showing to Pharaoh. What is it? Pasuk Chavtes. Hine sheva shonim bo'is. There are 7 years coming now. Sova godel b'choleret Mitzrayim. There's going to be abundance in the whole of Egypt. Pasuk Lamed. However, v'komu sheva shnei v'acharehen. Afterwards are going to come another 7 years after them of ra'ov, of hunger, V'nishkach kol hasava beret Mitzrayim, and the whole abundance is going to be forgotten. V'chila harav es haaretz, and the hunger is going to finish up the land. And that's what Rashi says, that this means when they're swallowing up the thin or swallowing up the thick, means that it's going to be forgotten. Not only is it going to be forgotten, Pasuk Lamed Aleph, v'lo yivoda hasava ba'aretz, it won't be even known. Mipnei harav ahu acharei kain, because the hunger is going to be so strong that the good years are not even going to be known. Ki chaved hu me'ed, because it's going to be very, very strong. So you're going to ask, says Yosef, why did the Rebbe make two dreams? Says Yosef, Pasuk Lamed Beis, v'alishonei sachaloim el parei pamoyim. Why is it that the Rebbe showed him two dreams twice? Ki nochen adover mim holikim u'mahir holikim laseise. Because the Rebbe is ready to do it right now. That's why he made twice. Therefore, Pasuk Lamed Gimel. Comes Yosef now and gives a very good suggestion to Pharaoh, being that there's going to be 7 good years and then there's going to be 7 bad years. So what should Pharaoh do? Says Yosef, Pasuk Lamed Gimel, ve'ata, and now Yerei Pharaoh should see to it. Ish noven v'chochem v'shisei olaret Mitzrayim. He should find a very smart, clever person, and he should appoint him on the whole Egypt. What should he do? Pasuk Lamed Daled, Yaseh Pharaoh v'yafkid pekidim ala oretz. He should appoint all kinds of supervisors all over the land. V'chimesh eseret Mitzrayim, and he should divide up the land and prepare it b'sheva shnei hasava, in the 7 good years. What should they do in that time? Pasuk Lamed Hey, v'yikbetzu es kol oichel hashanim ha'toves habois ha'ele. They should gather the food of these 7 good years, and they should store the food under Pharaoh's supervision. Pasuk Lamed Vav, and this food should be stored away in the land, for the 7 years of hunger, which are going to come later on Egypt, and this way the land won't be devastated because of the hunger, because there's going to be food stored away. Last pasuk on the subject, pasuk Lamed Zayin, and Pharaoh and his servants, they were unbelievably impressed with Yosef, to the extent that in the next pasuk, pasuk Lamed Ches, Vayomer Pharaoh el avodav, Pharaoh tells his servants, Hanimtza kozeh ish asher ruach Elokim boi. Where can we find another person like this that has such divine inspiration, ruach Elokim, that he can answer such an unbelievable dream? This is the basic story. The question that we're going to have over here, and we're going to see that the Mefarshim elaborate on this question, this makes absolutely no sense. Every little child, every farmer could understand that when you have a cow which is fat, what does that mean? He has what to eat. If you have a wheat which is thin, what does that mean? There's something wrong with the crop. It's as simple as that. So if the Rebbe is showing Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, something good, it means something is good is going to happen. If he shows him something bad, that means something bad is going to happen. If first he's showing good and then he's showing bad, that means first there's going to be good years and then there's going to be bad years. You don't need to have a very high IQ to figure that out. And how come all of a sudden over here, Pharaoh couldn't understand it, his sorcerers couldn't understand it, his professor couldn't understand it? Why? It's something so simple. Let's look at the Mefarshim, look at it. Look, go to source number 4. The first Rashi in our Parsha. What does it say? We had it also in our source number 1, but now we're going to look into Rashi. Rashi says the Pharaoh was standing al hayeir. He's standing by the water, by the Nilus. Why was he standing by the Nilus in the dream? Because the Rebbe is giving him a very good message. What's the message? Lefi shekol haaretz asuyim ye'orim b'deyodam. All the land of Egypt had canals where the water went through to go and give water to the land. The Nilus is the one that feeds the water to all these canals. Why? Because in Egypt there isn't enough rain, and like in other countries, so therefore the Rebbe gave a special bracha to the Nilus, and the Nilus feeds the others, and this is how they have water. So the Rebbe is showing to Pharaoh, we're talking over here about something which is going to happen to the land, to the food, to the abundance of the land, and that's why you see it all coming out from the Nilus, because the Nilus is the place. So what's so hard for Pharaoh to understand what's going on? But let's go to Rabbeinu Bachye. We have already many times already who the Rabbeinu Bachye is, and he says the question even stronger. Look at source number 5. Rabbeinu Bachye, Peirik Memalev Pasuk Ches in our parsha. He says, V'yesh li tmoya. There's a question here. How is it possible how is it possible that the smart people from Egypt couldn't explain to Pharaoh what his dream is all about? It's so clear. It is so clear that it shows on 7 abundant years and 7 years of hunger. Why? The pares, the cows, were a siman, were a sign for plowing. Like it says in the pasuk in Mishlei, "V'raf tvua is b'koyach sheir." How do you have a lot of tvua? How do you have a lot of a good crop? Because as good as the plowing is, which the plowing is done with the force of an ox, that is how you have good wheat. V'hashibolim, and the wheat that he saw in the dream, gamkin siman aktzira, that shows on the karim of the crop. So what takes so much brains here? So the Rabbeinu Bachye says that it was a miracle that they couldn't figure it out. Why couldn't they figure it out? Says Rabbeinu Bachye, Aval hakoil hayusiba mibal asibes yisale. This is the Rebbe made it in such a way that they shouldn't be able to figure it out. That the Rebbe Pasha dreid a cup to these Egyptians and they couldn't figure it out. And the Rebbe took away from them the power of interpreting. In order that Yosef should get the credit of interpreting the dream. In other words, really the dream is very simple. But the Rebbe made a special ness over here, and B'mele they couldn't figure it out. And soon we're going to see that Rashi doesn't agree with this Rabbeinu Bachye says, but the question that Rabbeinu Bachye says is the question that we're trying to figure out. In other words, this is something so simple. Why isn't that the Egyptians couldn't figure it out? And we have to figure out a different reason, because the fact that it was a miracle, Rashi would have then brought such a big miracle. And if being that Rashi doesn't bring it is a proof that, at least in Pshuta Shel Mikra, there was no miracle here. Let's see the Abarbanel. He also asks the same question, but even in a much stronger way. Source number 6, Abarbanel, he has a lot of questions on all these dreams. And the 4th question is, Ashayle Hadalit. What is the 4th question? Bepisreinim sheposar Yosef, in the interpretation that Yosef gave, Bifrat she'aleim nisbach l'chacham v'noven. Because of this, Pharaoh gave him the title Chacham, Noven, very smart, clever person. V'chiruach elikim kadishim bei. Yosef had epis ruach hakodesh over here when he said this dream. Vehi kihine yira shekal shebekalim vereik shebereikim hoyo paisareisam chaloimus kemei shepasareisam Yosef. The simplest of people, a person who has the lowest IQ, a person who's empty, reik shebereikim, could figure this out. So, what do we make such a big deal about Yosef? Not only that, the whole story that we have with Yosef in the previous parsha, how we interpreted for the Sara Mashkim and the Sara Oifim, their dreams, over there, over there he told them, here, the Rebbe will tell you what the interpretation. So over there could be that it was a little tougher to try to figure out what are the 3 baskets, that it means 3 days, etc. But when it comes to the dream of Pharaoh, it's evident from itself. You don't need an interpretation. It's so simple. Why? Because it's a known thing. When you see a fat cow, it shows that there's a lot of good grass. Then the animals become very fat and healthy. And this is the time of abundance. And also the bad cows, the bad-looking cows, they show on hunger. And the same thing, is the wheat, which are fat, which are good. They show on a lot of water in the land. And the peiros, that the fruit are very nice looking and healthy, vehu asava, and this is the time of abundance. But veharois, the bad ones, meires behepech al hara, they show the opposite on hunger. And because when it comes to getting crop, there are two processes. One is the plowing and seeding, and the second process is the cutting. Therefore, this two dreams was really one dream. The first dream was the first part of the process, and the second dream was the second part of the process. The cows were there to tell us about the plowing. What the Rebbe showed him the wheat was for the cutting of the crop. And because the number of cows and wheat was 7, obviously it shows Sava Shiva, that there's going to be 7 years of abundance, Ushnei Harav Shiva Gamkin, and the same thing, the years of hunger are going to be 7. What's the big cleverness and Ruach HaKodesh about all this? Any farmer will be able to explain to you this. And who couldn't figure out that the fat cow and the fat wheat, they show on the good years, and the other ones show on the bad years. How is it that these clever professors of Egypt couldn't figure this out? And not only that, and what did Pare find in this interpretation of Yosef? To give to Yosef all this honor and greatness, and to call him the smartest and clever person. Was there a divine inspiration over here? It's something so simple. So the question is, why couldn't they figure out what is going on here? So this is the first question. Then we have to try to understand, when we read in the source number 3, after Yosef gives the whole interpretation, if you look in Pasuk Lamed Gimel, he starts giving eitzes. He starts giving suggestions. Now, after I tell Pare what the 7 cows and 7 wheat mean, and now ve'ato yerei Pare should appoint somebody. Who asked him for give eitzes? Who asked him to give suggestions here? When you tell a king what is going to happen, if he has any sense in his mind, he knows. Now he's going to have to try to collect the food. If you look in your source number 8, the Alshich. The Alshich, just to give a little background, who was the Alshich? The Alshich was in Tzfas. There was a shul in Tzfas, a very small shul, but it had the biggest giants. The Rebbe of the shul was the Arizal. He was the Rebbe. Rabbi Yosef Karo, the one who wrote the Shulchan Aruch, he was the Rav. Couldn't have a better Rav than that. And the Reb Shlomo Al-Kabetz was the Chazan. That's why if you look in Lechadoidi, who wrote the Lechadoidi? If you look at the beginning of the Lechadoidis, there's the big letters in the beginning of each stanza. Lechadoidi, Likras Kalo, Shomer V'Zocher, Likras Shabbos. It makes the word Li Shlomo HaLevi. Shlomo HaLevi was the Chazan in the Arizal Shul. He's the one that made the Lechadoidi. And the Alshich was the Baldarshan. He was the one that used to say the speeches in the shul. And it was a very small shul, that is Al shul. So this was the Alshich. So the Alshich in Parsha Miketz in Pasuk Lamed Gimel, he asks, Hayoyetz lamelech nasnuhu. Source number 8. Did they appoint him over here as the yoyetz, as the confidant for the king, as the advisor to the king? Rak yishbach aleim liftarei. So listen to the dream and interpret it and finished. Umich nisoleimar. Who Bichlal asked him for any eitzes? Who asked him to say what Pare should do, what Pare shouldn't do? So there are some Mefarshim that answer on this question, like for example the Abarbanel, that really Yosef was explaining here to Pare that now the Rebbe is not just showing you this to give you tzar, to make you pain. The Rebbe is telling you that now you should go and collect the food, etc. So in Rashi, for sure we can't say that this is the reason why Yosef gave these eitzes, because then Rashi would have said that Yosef is saying this, that the Rebbe is not trying to cause any tzar. But Rashi doesn't say anything here, which means that it's very simple why Yosef is doing it. And we have to understand, Taka, why. Why is he taking on his own the initiative of giving eitzes? Not only that, look in source number 9, the Radak, in the beginning of the parsha. What does he say? He's also one of the big mefarshim of the chumash. This dream, anyone could figure it out. What's the big deal? Says the Radak, Elo she'avda chochmas chachamov kedei sheyifterehu v'yalu ligdula de apistrin. He says more or less, like the Rabbeinu Bachi said, that really the Egyptians knew the answer, but the Rebbe made it that they should forget it, so this way Yosef will do it and he'll become the big macher in Mitzrayim. But this is in Pshuta Shel Mikra, in the simple Pshat of the Pasuk, we cannot say this, because that means that a special miracle happened over here, that all the Chachamim can't figure out the simplest thing on earth. Rashi would have had to bring such a chiddush, and the fact that Rashi doesn't bring it is araya. So from here we see that this is not what happened over there. And if Yosef started giving eitzes, obviously there must have been a reason for it. So we have to understand the main question: why doesn't Rashi explain to us anything over here? Number one, what's the big deal with answering the question, with interpreting such a dream? Anyone could do it, even a farmer. And the second thing is, why is Yosef giving eitzes? In order to understand all of this, we'll have to try to understand another pasuk that we just learned, that something needs to be explained a little better. And when we will understand over there, we will be able to understand what was so great with Yosef. What is it? Go to source number 10. Source number 10 is pasuk ches, that we already learned before in source number 1, but we're going to do it also with the Rashi. What does the pasuk say in pasuk ches in our parsha? Vahiba beiker, and it was in the morning, vatipoim ruchai, and Pharaoh was agitated. He saw such a dream, he couldn't figure out what it was. Vayishlach, and he sent. Vayikra is kol chartumim Mitzrayim v'schachomeho. He called over all the chartumim of Mitzrayim, all the magicians and all the professors. Vayisaper Pharaoh lehem es chaloimei ve'ein poiser oisam lePharaoh. He told them the dream, but ein poiser oisam, there's no one who can interpret it lePharaoh, to Pharaoh. So Rashi is going to ask a question: what does it mean? And they couldn't interpret it to Pharaoh. The pasuk should have just said ve'ein poiser oisam, and nobody could find the interpretation to the dream. Rashi, what does Rashi say? But in source number 10, ve'ein poiser oisam lePharaoh, there was nobody was able to give the interpretation to Pharaoh. Says Rashi, poisrim hayu oisam. They did give interpretations, avoloi lePharaoh, but not to Pharaoh. What does it mean, not to Pharaoh? Says Rashi, shelo yehoyo koilon nichnas beoznav. Their voice wasn't entering his ears. In other words, Rashi, that the Pharaoh didn't have any gishmak. What they're giving interpretations, it's not it. It's missing a lot. What did they interpret? Sheva bonis ato moilid, sheva bonis ato kever. They're telling Pharaoh, you know what the 7 cows means? You're going to have 7 daughters are going to be born. That's the good side of it. And the bad part of it is that you're going to bury 7 daughters. This is what they answered. Now, we need to figure this out. What does this mean? Why in the world are they saying that this means 7 daughters are going to be born and 7 are going to die? What does this mean? Why can't they say the normal thing, that it means 7 good years and 7 bad years? There must be a reason here, that they see something in the dream. The dream is pushing them to say something different, and not that it means literally what they see. Let's look in the source where Rashi takes this from, and it's going to become a little bit clearer over here. The source is in Bereshis Rabbi, in Medrash Rabbi, in Parsha Peites Siv Vav. Vayishlach vayikra. The Pharaoh sent to call over all the smart people. Says the Medrash, Rabbi Shua de Sichni b'shem Rabbi Levi. Rabbi Shua of Sichni said in the name of Rabbi Levi, they were interpreting for Pharaoh these magicians, but it wasn't entering his ears. Why? Because they said, Sheva paris hatoives, Sheva banis hatomolit. 7 cows, there's 7 good ones, you're going to have 7 daughters. But Sheva paris harois, Sheva paris hatokoive. What does it mean? Bad cows? Not good-looking cows? That you're going to bury 7 daughters. V'chein amru, the Medrash adds another thing that they interpreted. Sheva shibolim hatoives, the 7 wheat that are thick. Sheva malchis atamechabish. You are going to conquer 7 lands. Sheva shibolim harois. What does it mean? The 7 thin wheats. Sheva parchias murdersbach. 7 nations are going to rebel against you. So we have to understand over here. Wait a minute. In the Medrash, it's very clear. We're soon going to try to figure out why they said that, but they said there's 2 dreams. One dream is cows, and the second dream is the wheat. So they said 7 cows goes on 7 daughters. So the thick ones means 7 daughters are going to be born, and the 7 thin ones, they're going to die. And the wheat means that he's going to have 7 wars he's going to win, and 7 he's going to lose. Rashi says no. Rashi only brings the first one, about the 7 daughters. Why? There's 2 dreams here. Why is Rashi bringing only the daughters? So we must say that according to Rashi, the Khartoumim realized that these 2 dreams are really one dream. So at least that part they got straight. But the question is, why did they say something so strange? Daughters. Why? Why couldn't they say something normal? So the Barbanel answers, Take, that the Khartoumim, they knew that a dream is always a remez to something else. It is a sign, a symbol to something else. Therefore, cows doesn't mean cows, wheat doesn't mean wheat, it means something else. So what does it mean? It means daughters. But according to Rashi, no. Rashi told us already a few times in the Torah that when a dream shows you something, it means that thing itself. Literally, that's what it means. Let's look at source number 12. As we brought before with the story with the Ruzhiner. What happened by Yankov? Pasuk in Parsha Vayetze, Perik Chav Ches Pasuk Yud Beis, source number 12. Vayachaloim, Yankov had a dream. Vehine Sula Mutzav Arzo, there was a ladder stuck in the ground. Veroisha Magia Shemaima, and the top of the ladder is up in heaven. Vehine Malachi Lekim Olim Verdim, and the Malachim are going up and going down. Says Rashi, what are these angels? Literal angels. Malachim shilavu ba'aretz ein yotzim chutz la'aretz. The malachim that escorted Yankov Avinu in Eretz Yisrael, they don't go out of Eretz Yisrael. Ve'alu l'rakia. They went up to heaven. Excuse me. Ve'yardu malachi chutz la'aretz l'ravosei. And came the malachim that are going to take him to chutz la'aretz to escort him. So when he has a dream about angels, what does it mean? Angels. Source number 13, Parsha Vayetze, Perik Lamed Aleph, Pasuk Yud. Again with Yaakov Avinu, at the end of Parsha Vayetze. When he was doing over there the whole story with the sheep by Lavan, and he had he got the sick ones and the ones that have spots, etc. So Yaakov tells his wives, I saw in my dream, what did I see? I saw the whole thing with the sheep that had all the colors, etc. So when he saw sheep in the dream, and it meant literally sheep. Or, for example, another dream that we had last week in the Parsha, source number 14, Parsha Vayetze Perik Lamed Zayin Pasuk Hey. This is the dream that Yosef had with his brothers. What does it say over there? That we are binding sheaves of wheat in the bundles of wheat in the field. And my bundle was standing over there. And you guys, my brothers, your bundles were all around me, they surrounded me, and they bowed down to me. And it's not epsaremis to something else. It's very simple. It's going to be wheat, which is going to cause that they're going to bow down. What? Food. And that's what happened later. That because of food, they bow down to Yosef. So when a Rebbe shows somebody a dream, it means literally that. So therefore, what the Barbanel wants to answer, that the reason why the Khartoumim said daughters was because a dream is a remes to something else. According to Rashi, no. A cow means a cow. Wheat means wheat, abundance. So we need to understand why did the Chartumim and the Chachamim not answer straight what this means. Obviously, there was something here that was bothering them. And then later, if we'll have the time, we'll see also that the artscroll chumash also asks a few of these questions, and the answers that they bring is taken from some mefarshim, but they're totally not in pshuta shel mikra. They're not on the simple level of the pasuk, because we're going to have over here a very, very simple pshat of what happened over here. And the story is very, very simple. And as usual, there's a few words in the pasuk that we need to analyze. Once we have those words straight, everything falls into place. What is it? To make a long story short, go back to your source number 1, right in the beginning, in pasuk Gimel. Pharaoh is standing, and all of a sudden, what does he see? That 7 cows come out, very abundant cows. And then in pasuk Gimel it says, "Vehine sheva parei sacheres oile sacharein min hayoir." Come the second set of cows, which were very, very ro'es mare v'dakis basar, and they were very thin. And what happened? Everybody thinks that what happened, the 7 fat cows came out, and behind them came the 7 thin cows and ate them up. No, there's a detail that everybody's missing here. The pasuk says, the end of pasuk Gimel, "Vata'amoidna eitzel aporis al sefas hayoir." What happened over here? 7 fat cows came out and they stopped to graze. 7 thin cows come out and they stand next to them. So now Pharaoh sees 14 cows. And this was the problem that nobody was able to figure out. If you're telling me the first come out 7 fat cows and then come out 7 thin cows, oh, very simple. First there's going to be 7 abundant years, then there's going to be 7 bad years, and the bad years are going to eat up the 7 good years that they're going to be forgotten. Perfect, no problem. That's not what happened. What happened over here is something that made absolutely no sense. That the 7 good cows and the 7 bad cows are all standing together, which means that the Rebbe is telling Pharaoh that there's going to be a period of 14 years of good and bad at the same time. Says Pharaoh, how is that possible? It's impossible to have good and bad at the same time. This is what they couldn't figure out. That's what the Chartumim had to come up with some other idea, not 7 good years and 7 bad years. They had to figure out, what can you have simultaneous good and bad at the same time? So therefore, what did they come up with? They came up with a very interesting idea. 7 daughters and 7 daughters. Why 7 daughters and 7 daughters? Very simple. Rashi doesn't have to explain it. If you look in source number 15, before in Parsha Lech Lecha, Perikid Beis Pasuk Desvav, there was a story that Avram and Sarah ended up in Egypt, by Mitzrayim. What happened when the Egyptians saw Sarah? What does it say? Vayiru oisa Sarai Parai. The ministers of Parai saw Sarah. She was this beautiful looking lady. Vayhalalu oisal Parai vatuka chaisha beis Parai. She was taken to the house of Parai because everybody saw how beautiful she is. And Parai wanted her as a wife. What did the Rebbe do? Vainaga Hashem, the Rebbe gave it to Parai. He gave him some good plagues, and he learned his lesson. So Parai came complaining to Avram, why didn't you tell me this is your wife? And of course, Avram explained to him, because the people asked me about my wife, it's none of their business, etc. So, what does Pharaoh say? Look at source number 16, over there in Pasuk Yutes, in Parsha Lech Lecha. Lama marta chaisi, why'd you say that she's your sister? Because it was your sister, I was going to take her as a wife. And now, and listen to what Pharaoh says to Avram. Here's your wife, get out of here. Get out of my country. Says Rashi, a very interesting thing. Like Avimelech, Pharaoh didn't say like Avimelech. There was a story before with Avram and Sarah that they ended up by Avimelech and Plishtim. And when the same story happened that he wanted to have Sarah, and Lepoil, Sarah went back to Avram, Avimelech said, stay in my land, take any part you want, be my guest. Pharaoh didn't say that. Pharaoh said, please go out from me. Why? Says Rashi, Pharaoh didn't say like Avimelech, here's the land. Go, leave Mitzrayim. Why? Because the Egyptians were all very immoral. No, if the Egyptians were immoral, you could imagine what Pharaoh was. So therefore, for Pharaoh to have 10, 20, 30 wives and 60 concubines, etc., it was definitely abnormal. So it wasn't very abnormal for Pharaoh to be able to have 14 daughters at the same time. And the Rebbe is telling him, you're going to have 14 daughters, but 7 are going to be a big joy for you, and the other 7 you're going to bury, and that's going to cause a lot of tzar. So this is why the Khartoumim were saying, how could you have 14 simultaneous, 7 good and 7 bad? That's the only thing they were able to come up with. The Medrash says that they were saying that you're going to have 14 wars, 7 is going to win and 7 is going to lose. No, Rashi cannot say that as an example. Why? We learned already before in Rashi, in Parsha Lech Lecha, look in source number 17. In Perek Yudal, the Pasuk Tes, there's the famous story over there in the time of Lot with Avram, that there were 5 kings that had a war with the 4 kings. 5 against 4. Without going into the whole story now with Kedar Lo'emer, look in the source number 17. As Kedar Lo'emer Melech Elam, Sid al Melech Goyim, Amraf al Melech Shiner, Ve'ariach Melech Alasar. They were 4 kings, and these 4 went against 5. Says Rashi, Ve'af al Pikein Notzchu Hamuatim. Even though there were only 4 against 5, still in all, these 4 who were less managed to win over the other ones. To let you know, they were so strong that even if it was 4 against 5, they still won. And still in all, Avram Avinu still ran after them. Whatever Avram did is another story. But we see over here that Rashi says, 4 against 5, you have to be extra powerful to be 4 against 5. What does the Medrash say? What did the Khartoumim say? That Pharaoh had 14 wars, and 7 simultaneous, and 7 he would win and 7 he would lose. For one king to have 14 simultaneous wars, that is not pshuta shalmika. That is not that's not normal. So therefore Rashi doesn't even bring it. But Rashi just brings the daughters. Why does he bring the daughters? Because from here we understand what was the problem of the Egyptian Chachamim. They were trying to figure out how can you have 14 simultaneous things, 7 good and 7 bad. So to say that 7 good years, 7 bad years, that's impossible. You can't have the same year is abundant and hunger. It doesn't work. Mashen came when Yosef came, and Yosef explained that what does it mean? That there's going to be 7 good years, 7 bad years, but it's not 7 and 7, it's 14. In the 7 good years, we gather for the 7 bad years. Restore. In the 7 bad years, we eat from the crop of the 7 good years. So it's not 7 and 7, it's a period of 14. The first 7 give to the second 7, and the second 7 eat from the first 7. So now we understand how it's simultaneous. So therefore, what Yosef said, Ve'ato yerei Pharaoh, now Pharaoh should appoint someone to gather food. It's not an eitzah. It's not his giving it a suggestion of here. He's explaining, this is the interpretation. That when you take a person and he's going to gather in the 7 good years for the 7 bad years, because in the 7 bad years we eat from the 7 good years, oh, now we understand how we could have 14 years simultaneously of good and bad together. So now all the questions are taken care of. What did we ask? We asked, number 1, what was the big deal? Why couldn't the Khartoumim figure it out on their own? And then we asked, why did they come up with such nonsense with daughters? Why didn't they just say that it means good years? And why did Yosef add a suggestion? Why? Because they couldn't figure out how could you have a simultaneous good and bad. It just doesn't work. And Yosef explained that. So now everything comes into place. But let's go a little bit deeper over here. What is this whole story with this? By the way, if I may, I looked also in the artscroll chumash. We're going to do this very briefly. For example, they do mention this concept of the cows standing next to each other. And it says over here that this fact that the fat cows followed the lean cows indicated that the years of famine would immediately follow the years of plenty with no lapse of time between them. That's what we're standing together to say that it's going to be one right after the other. And they bring it from the Ramban. And the Rebbe says that this we know already from the Pasuk itself. Because the Pasuk says, Oyles achareihen, they come up right after them. If it wasn't one right after the other, then the Torah would have said that 7 cows came and they went grazing. And then after a while, another 7 came and went somewhere else. Right? So then they're not one right after the other. But the pasuk says, Oiles acharein, come up right after them. So the fact that they were standing together is not to show that they were right after the other. On the contrary, they're there to show they were there simultaneously. And then they also bring from the Sforno, also from the Italians, that they stood one along the other. It symbolized for a period of time there would be both famine and plenty. In other words, for only a period of time, a short period. No, according to the way the Rebbe explains it over here, and this is what Rashi is saying, they were the whole time, it was 14 years, simultaneously, that there was the good for the bad and the bad for the good. And this is also with the other explanations that they give of why they gave the daughters, etc. You could look at it inside and you will see that all these mefarshim, there is a question there that doesn't match with what the pasuk says. However, if we explain it, that their problem was that they couldn't understand why are they standing in proximity to each other because they're two opposites, now everything makes sense. But let's go a little bit deeper over here. What is Taka the story over here? Why Taka did Rebbe make it in such a way that there's these dreams? And what are they saying over here, these dreams? The Rebbe explains it in Al Kabbalah, and I'm just going to make it very brief. But it's very geschmack to see. Now we'll understand why Yosef is constantly surrounded with dreams. Yosef had dreams with him and his brothers. Then Yosef had dreams when he was in the jail with the Saramashkim, the Saroifim. Then all of a sudden, Pharaoh again, he has dreams. Everything, his whole life is surrounded around dreams. What is going on over here? So look at your source number 18. In Parsha Vayeshev, Perik Lamed Zayin, Pasuk Yudalid, when Yaakov took Yosef and he sent him to go and check out how the brothers are doing. And then the brothers took him then and threw him into the pit, etc. What does it say? Look at source 18. Perik Lamed Zayin, Pasuk Yudalid in Parsha Vayeshev. Vayomer lo, Yaakov told Yosef, Lech no re'eh es shleim achecha v'shleim atzoin. Go and see how your brothers are doing and how the sheep are doing. Vashiveni davar, and bring me back regards. Vayishlocheyu me'emek Chevron, and he sent him from the valley of Chevron. Vayovish Shchema, and he came to Shechem. Says Rashi, what does it mean me'emek Chevron, from the valley of Chevron? Asks Rashi, v'hale Chevron bahar. Chevron was on a mountain, not in a valley. And says Rashi, Elo me'etza amuka shaloisei tzadik hakover b'Chevron. From the deep etza, from the deep concept, the subject, the deep issue of that tzaddik which is buried in Chevron. Who is buried in Chevron? Avram Avinu. Lekayim mashenema lavram ben apsarim ki geir yizaracha. The Rebbe told Avram Avinu, your children are going to be in a strange land, and the Rebbe is going to torture them for 400 years, etc. So Avram Avinu knew that the Yidden are going to have to go into Golus. Yaakov Avinu was starting that process. He sent him from the deepness of Chevron. That here we are starting the whole idea of Avram Avinu, of what? Of Golus Mitzrayim. How does it start? Look at number 19, the Al-Shich that we mentioned before, the Baldarshan by the Arizal. The Al-Shich says in here in our Psukim, in Perik Memalef Pasuk Lamed Gimel, Ki b'chaleim parei halos, in these chaloim, this dream of parei, ubi Yosef hu ashalit ala artscroll, and the fact that Yosef now became the viceroy, the ruler on Egypt, tluya geulas Yisrael migolus Mitzrayim. On this depends the geula of the Yidden of going out of Golus Mitzrayim, shehaya oz maschil. That the Golus Mitzrayim started here with Yosef. Ubazen naskil venire ma inyan maimer Yosef alechov loimer le'avi v'chilkalti Yosef. When Yosef finally revealed himself to the brothers and he told them, go and tell my father Yaakov to come because I will feed you here in Mitzrayim. What does it mean, I will feed you here in Mitzrayim? I'm the one who's starting the whole process of Geulas Mitzrayim. How does that work? The Alshich doesn't explain it in detail, but the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe of Lubavitch, explains it in detail beautifully. Look in source number 20, in Eira Torah in Parsha Miketz, page Shin Mem. First, the Tzemach Tzedek brings the Alshich that we just brought now, and he also brings the Shaloh, etc. And the Tzemach Tzedek says as follows: V'nakdim mashekosov bezoyar. we're going to give a preface over here with what the Zohar says over here in Parsha Vayeshev. Ki kasher gozra chochmaso yizborich, when the Rebbe made a gzeira, when the Rebbe made this decree, lehagles es Yisrael Mitzrayim, that he's going to send the Yidden to Golus Mitzrayim, and he hints over here to this pasuk by Shlachehu me'emek Chevron, the pasuk that we just read in source number 18, that it all started from when Yaakov sent when Yaakov sent Yosef. Says the Tzemach Tzedek, Kaviyachol Golso Shechina Imaim. The Rebbe also went to Golus together with the Yidden. But it's not stam that the Rebbe sent the Yidden Mitzrayim in Golus and then the Rebbe followed. No, it's the other way around. Says the Tzemach Tzedek, V'lo yoid, Kim shekodmo lohem me'oz yarad Yosef shama. That the Rebbe, first the Rebbe went to Mitzrayim and then he slept the Yidden. Where do we see that the Rebbe went? Yosef going down to Mitzrayim. Yosef is the representative of the Shechina. There was nobody until Yosef that was able to be a Merkava, a subjugated to the Eibishter, someone who represents the Eibishter as strong as Yosef. I'm not going to go now through the whole thing, but there's a beautiful, beautiful maimer, and a discourse, a Chassidic discourse from the previous Rebbe, which is called V'lei Zachar Saramashkim Es Yosef Vayishkacheyu. This is from the year Tofresh Peiches. This is the first year that the previous Rebbe came out from Russia and he spoke in Poland. We'll have a separate shiur on that. But over there the Rebbe explains the difference between Yosef and his brothers. The brothers, they were together with Yaakov. The brothers, they did not know how to deal with Olam Hazeh. They did not know how to deal with the mundane world. They were afraid of it. They were these people locked in their ghetto, and if they would get involved with Mitzrayim, they would totally lose themselves. Yosef was such a tzaddik, even greater than Yaakov, greater than Avraham, than Yitzchak, and he managed to be in Mitzrayim and be the ruler over Mitzrayim. And this is what it says over here, because he represented the Shechina. It's a very interesting subject which we're not going to get into right now. But what do we see from here? That Yosef, he comes from, again, it's a long subject, but Bekitzer, we know that there are 4 worlds, Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. So most of the Neshamas come from Olam HaBriya, Olam HaAtzilus, and the Ovis come from Atzilus. Yosef comes from a place which is called Machshava Hakduma De'ak, which is way, way above all these 4 worlds. This is what Yosef was. So therefore, this whole story with Yosef is the beginning of Golus Mitzrayim, how the Eibishter is coming now to Egypt to prepare Egypt for the Yidden, so this way the Yidden will be able to pull through this whole Golus. So why is it all coming out with dreams? Go now to your source number 21. There's a pasuk that we say in Shir HaMailes, and it's in Tilim, in Perik, Kuf Chuf Chav Vav, right in the beginning, and this is one of the psukim in Tehillim that we could see that David HaMelech was before the Beis HaMikdash, and that he wrote this Perik where David HaMelech had Ruach HaKodesh, that the Yidden are going to have a Beis HaMikdash, then they're going to go into Golus, the Beis HaMikdash will be destroyed, and then they will come back from Golus. What does it say? Shir HaMailes, Beshuv Hashem es Shiv as Tzion, when the Yidden are going to come back to Tzion, Hayinu kecholmim. We were like dreamers. The whole concept of Golus is like a dream. Why is it a dream? Go to source number 22. Comes the Alter Rebbe in his famous Sefer Torah Oid, Parsha Vayeshev, and he explains as follows. I'm just going to read a few words from this quote here. Shir HaMailes b'shuv Hashem hayinu kecholmim. Why is Golus considered like a dream? Explains Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe, because a dream can mix 2 things which are total opposites to each other. It connects them both. In a dream, people could dream opposites. They could dream that there are persons flying, all kinds of crazy things. Why is it talking a dream? That's what we dream, that we dream all these fantasies. The intellect sort of moves to the side. The intellect that usually distinguishes things and analyzes things. And then only remains the imagination. And imagination can imagine all kinds of crazy things. Like a boat flying, right? Like the Rambam explains it in his 8 chapters. But when a person is awake, so his intellect is working. The intellect overcomes the imagination, and it doesn't let him think of crazy things. Because with his intellect, what does he see? He sees that these are total two separate things. A boat and flying are two separate things, so you can't imagine that. Says the Alter Rebbe, the same thing is in Galus. Galus is like a dream. Why? What do we see in Galus? There's a nitzut, there's a spark of godliness in the person, but it's like sleeping. It's like that the intellect moved away. Therefore, what happens? He can encompass two opposites. What are the two opposites? On the one hand, during the day, he is busy in working and trying to make money and dealing with mundane things which have absolutely nothing to do with elikus, with godliness. Although in the morning, when he was davening, he evokes his love for Hashem, that he wants to get out of his whole body and get just connected to the Eibishter. He thinks of Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and he starts thinking of the greatness of the Eibishter, and now he becomes one thing with the Eibishter. All he sees is godliness, and all of a sudden, later, what happens after davening? The whole love that he had for the Hashem is gone, and all of a sudden, everything changes. What happened? Because that's the whole concept of a dream. A dream is opposites. Galus is opposites. A Jew and Galus, they just don't belong there. A Jew belongs in Eretz Yisrael. A Jew belongs in the Zman of Mashiach, when godliness is revealed. That's what it says. Beshuv Hashem es Shivas Tzion. When we come back to Yerushalayim, what are we going to see? Hayinu kecholmim. We saw that it was a dream. That's why Yosef, he is the one that represents the Shechina coming into Mitzrayim. So therefore everything came out in dreams. To show that the fact that we're going to Mitzrayim, that's a dream, that is not the reality. The reality is going out of Mitzrayim, going to Matan Torah. The reality is going out of Galus and receiving the Torah Chadasha from Mashiach. So according to this, now we understand why Yosef is the one that explained to Pharaoh the Chaloim. What was the problem with the Chaloim? That were two opposites. Good and bad at the same time. It doesn't make sense. Yes, Yosef is the one that explains that. Because Yosef is the one that represents Chalomis. He represents the going down into Galus, which is a Chalom, which is two opposites, and he pulls us out of it. And that's what even Pharaoh realized. There is nobody like Yosef that can explain that. And that is what every Jew has to do, to realize the place of a Yid is not Galus. Galus is not the place for a Yid. There are some people who they sit and learn a whole day in Koilel and Baruch Hashem. They have a father-in-law that supports them. They have everything they need. So this is mamish like in the times of Mashiach. As long as we are not bringing our karbonos, as long as we don't have our Beis HaMikdash, this is not a place for a Jew. We have to get out of this galus, because this is not the place for a Jew. It's hafach. We're dealing in opposite times. It just doesn't make sense. A Yid and galus don't go together. And this is what Yosef taught us. And therefore, we all have to be like Yosef, pisra nachaloimus, that we have to interpret that what is the chaloim? That we have to get out of galus and go straight to the Beis HaMikdash Hashlishi, Bekarev Mamish. This is briefly the story with Yosef. Any questions? Very good question. The story of Yosef, we always read it in the week of Chanuka. Any connection? Sure. We have a separate shir. If you look on the website, you will see it. Shir that we discussed regarding Chanuka. What was the whole miracle of Chanuka? That Eibishter made two opposites. You have a rabbim beyad miatim. There were few in hands of many. Does it make sense? It makes absolutely no sense. The Yidden had a special mesiras nefesh when they went and fought. The Hashmonaim, they fought Me'atim, few against many. So the Rebbe paid them back with a miracle of Chanuka, of the oil. And we explained over there, but I don't want to go now into the whole story, how the miracle of the oil was that there were opposites over there. The oil was consuming and not consuming at the same time. It was mamish, an unbelievable miracle, and that's why we have the whole Yom Tov Chanuka. We're not going to get into it right now, but that's the basic connection that we're talking about opposites. And a Yid is a noise hafachim. A Yid is constantly dealing with opposites. Golus, the Rebishter, and the world seem to be two opposites, because the Rebishter is Ruchnius, the world is Gashmius, mundane. How do we put the two together? But this is what the Yidden represent. B'siras Nefesh for the Rebishter. And that is why, when we come to such a story like Yosef, what did Yosef prove to us? That he, on the one hand, he was for a while in Golus, he was in jail, but from jail he went out and he became the Shalit HaMitzrayim, he became the Balabas in the whole of Egypt. The Rebishter tells us very clearly that Ve'alu Meshim Be'atzia and Lishbet Es Esav, that what's going to happen is that we're going to judge Esav. Esav is the one that gives us the biggest galus of 2,000 years, but the end is going to be V'hoisal Hashem Amlucha, that the Rebbe is going to be the ruler of the world, and V'hoy Hashem Lemelech Al Kol Haaretz. How is that? B'yomahu Yihi Hashem Echad U'Shmei Echad. It's because the Yidden, Mikam Chok Yisrael, Goy Echad Ba'aretz, the Yidden are the ones who bring out the Echad, the fact of the Rebbe being the Balabas on the world. And let this be the Kar of Mamish, that we should get out of this Golus and we should be Zeiche to actually see Ve'hoisa La Hashem Hamlucha.